Variance Board to order. Gentlemen, please remove your caps and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a pretty good agenda today, and I'm in a 2-hour parking zone, so we're going to try and move along. I'm Larry Graydon, the chair. I farm with my family up on Mount Vernon Township, and I'd like the other board members to introduce yourselves, please.
Phil Schwantz, farmer, Mount Vernon Township.
Margaret Walsh, I'm the city resident on the committee.
I'm Richard Honeywell. I'm retired, 18 years, live in southeast Minnesota along Scenic Drive. I also have a farm.
Okay, first item is approve the agenda. Has everybody looked at that? There's 4 items, Eric, is that right?
Yes, 4 petitions. Some of them are 2 parts. The first one, and there would be 2 separate votes and motions when we discuss that one.
Okay, and the minutes, well, do we need to approve the agenda? Does somebody want to make a motion?
Second.
Moved by Phil, second by Margaret. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of the July 20th minutes. Has everybody read them, looked at them? See a motion to that effect?
They look good to me, and I would move we approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Moved by Richard, second by Phil to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion has passed. Okay, petitions, docket BOA 828-1701. Eric, do you have some information for us on the first petition?
I do. I'm going to hand it over to Chuck, and he's going to give just a brief PowerPoint on some of the mapping exhibits and some of the other aspects that are involved with this particular property.
This is Justin and Jennifer Spalding variance application. This is for 2 variances. One variance is for the prime soils, and the other is for a less than 5-acre parcel because it was split 2 times. And the reason why the variance is needed, like I said before, because there are prime soils. It's in the type 2 soils where they're proposing to build. And they split it in, I believe, in 97 and 99. So in order to, if they would do greater than 5 acres, they would not need a variance for that, but they did split it 2 times, and they're going under 5 acres. They're going from a 1 to a 1.7 acre. Also should be noted that last month they went for a conditional use for less than 40 acres, and it was recommended to go to the county board, but part of the thing is to go through go before the Board of Adjustments, and then it will be recommended to the county board. Pretty much what I explained before. This is a bigger map of where it's going to be located. And then we got an exact surveyed area of where this is going to be. This is the survey from his surveyor, and you can see where the existing buildings are now. Oops. Which is right here. So this new parcel would be right below that, fairly close to the other one, and the driveway would be coming from County Road 15. And then I'll play a video of the location also. that's the existing farmstead. And where they're proposing to build is right adjacent to it. Also, you can see the tree line down below, which would indicate steeper slopes, which it is. Those are non-prime soils, but it would be difficult to get there with the driveway, and then you'd be into the steeper slopes or bluffland setbacks. Where they're going to be building is pretty much all type 2 soils versus type 3, so they're pretty good soils. They mentioned something in their letter about having a hog lot there, which was a little bit difficult to grow garden things. So it's, you know, it's prime soil according to USDA, but they had difficulty planting things in that location.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to hand out the findings of facts evaluation sheets for the board. We are trying this month our technique of trying to help you folks to not have to go back and forth to the staff report and hopefully save some time. So if you like this, we can continue with it. So we'll give it a try. There's 2 different ones, one about the size of the acreage or the proposed development, the lot, and the second one is about prime soils. So you'll have to set those in the correct order, which they should be. So I'll pass those out.
Could you state the name for the full time?
I think I got 2 of these.
We got 2 votes.
Yep, we need to.
Oh, I need 2. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I should have stated my name earlier. Thank you for reminding me. I'm Kay Qualley. I'm the Planning and Environmental Services Director for the county. And you should have 2 in front of you for the findings of facts, 1 for each variance. Thank you.
Eric, are we done with staff then at this time?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to open the meeting to public comment?
I'll make a motion to open the public comment section.
Is there a second?
I think Phil did, I will.
Margaret made the motion, Phil seconded. For those of you listening, we're trying to get this recorded properly. We have to follow the correct procedure. We have attorney over here to keep us out of trouble, so we're trying to not get her too busy. Anyway, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will now open the meeting for this petition for public comment. If anybody wishes to speak for or against this petition, would you please come forward? State your name, where you live, and what you got to say.
Nobody has anything to say?
I got to ask it 3 times. I guess I'll do one more. Is there anybody that wishes to speak for or against this petition? Third time, is there anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition? I guess most of the time there is, so I'm a little surprised, but evidently there's nobody for it, nobody against it. So, well,
Maybe I'll say something. I'm not against it.
okay.
I'm a neighbor. But if you,
Could you state your name,
my
sir?
name is Cliff Ferris. I'm a adjacent property owner.
Okay.
Part of the property that is between, I guess I'd have to show you on a map.
Could we pull the map up on the,
Okay, you can. I'll go over here, show you. This property belongs to me.
Okay.
And I've been paying the taxes on it. And my proposal to make this easier for Justin was to trade this little piece of triangle here for this piece here, and then also that the people at the machine shop has agreed to buy that portion, because these two driveways are currently going across my property. And I'm not opposing that. But by doing this, it would give Justin about 150 or 60 more feet of road frontage, which would come closer to what your
Requirement.
county code and planning wants 300 feet. That would get them closer to 250, which should help him. But Ken and I have talked about a little bit, but we haven't come up to a conclusion yet. But I'm offering that as a solution to make it more viable for him to get the permit.
Okay.
Now, is that gentleman here today?
I'm Ken Spalding. I'm the one I'm Ken Spalding. I'm the one that's known to me in the lane. Like Cliff says, we're trying to work something out, but right now, Western Union is supposed to own that acre. And we don't know if Cliff owns it or Western Union. If Cliff owns it, then him and I'll work something out. I either buy him or trade. But right now, it's up in the air because Wayne or whoever surveyed it found out that back in the 40s, Western Union bought an acre there. And after they put the highway through, Western Union just abandoned it. Now, I don't know.
What happened, Ken, was Western Union abandoned it. The county took possession of it, and they quit clean deeded it to the previous owner.
Okay,
of mine.
that's what I don't
That's
know.
in my title.
Okay, so then
Just explain
Cliff
it.
owns it. So if Cliff I'll work something out. Either I'll pay him for his part there, or we'll trade. But it's just a little piece there. What I owned along the side of the road, there's 8/10 of an acre.
Evidently, somebody has a variance to get the driveway through there, and
I
has been
don't
doing it
know.
all these years.
But
No, it's
I-
never been a variance. I'm aware of
When I
it.
bought the farm, County Road 15 wasn't where it is now.
Yeah,
I
it
see.
went more on the property line.
Sure.
When the road was improved, the road used to go over here this way.
went.
And then when they improved the road, they cut across here and it took this piece off, but it's still, I'm still paying the tax on it. And the driveways were put in, and I don't think any easement was ever given.
So do you own across the road? Is that right?
I own this triangle across the road. I own all of this, yeah.
Right. Okay. My guess is it's probably yours then.
Well.
But as long as you guys work it out, that's not,
Doesn't get long.
yes, if you guys work it out, that's not really our problem today.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We'll work something out.
We like to hear that.
So in order to get a driveway to this new proposed building site, you have to go through that triangle, or you can avoid it?
Right now, where they've got the highway marked out to go through is back over right about in here,
Okay.
is where they got the driveway marked out on the road. They got stakes in there for the driveway. It's not in this, going across this, it's going into here.
So let me ask you this question. If you do all of that, if you were to do that, and it sounds like it ought to be pretty easy, handshake and some paperwork to codify it, what does that do to the prime soil deal? Does that change what we're giving you a variance for?
Well, he's still coming in where the house is gonna be.
Okay.
The driveway's gonna still come in where they got the stakes there, where the surveyor's got, the highway comes in, or his driveway will still come in where it's surveyed out.
So there's nothing that we need to really
Because right
do.
now, where they will go into this, will not be going across Cliff's land.
Sure.
The only thing that's going to go on Cliff is the driveway going into our farm site.
But this deal that you guys have just cooked up in our presence is not going to change the need for the prime soil.
No, that,
The size
No, that's
of the
all.
lot changes, everything before us
It's not nothing to do with this.
had nothing to do.
Thank you.
All right.
You got all that, Richard?
I think we got it figured out.
Okay.
This is a superfluous deal that has nothing to do with us.
I just have a question, and it doesn't have any bearing whether or not I would approve or disapprove it, but I read a 1.2 acre transfer of property, and I read 1.7. So was the 1.2 before, and then afterwards we get it surveyed, it came to 1.7?
The 1.2 was what was up for conditional use. And then after that, during the conditional use, they recommended it go to 1.7 because that would give them more area for the septic area. So they upped it up to 1.7 at the planning commission.
And
Originally, they went for 1.2.
as I understand this, Grandpa's transferring the land and everybody's on the same song page and everything. I mean, if it goes to 1.7, he'll transfer 1.7.
They were, all parties were here during that meeting, so yes, they're aware of that.
Question for Eric, staff. The findings of fact, we're supposed to do these separately. So which one would you recommend we do first?
I would actually suggest that you finish with your public hearing portion, and then I'll explain the new procedures for the findings of fact.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak for or against this petition? Second time, anybody else wish to speak for or against this petition? Last chance, third time. Anybody else wish to speak for or against this petition? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Richard and Margaret, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed, the public hearing is closed. Now, our legal staff will give us direction here.
Hopefully clarify things for you. So what this is intended to be is essentially a draft of the findings. I know one of the things that we've had during our meetings has been that discussion of why each of the criteria has been met. What this is intended to do is to summarize what the staff analysis provided based on the record. You can choose to disregard that. You can choose to change that. Anything that's in the italics underneath the criteria can be modified at any point. And the same with the underlined item in each of the criteria. Those are the words that we used to be the yes or no or is not. It's now just what the finding would read, and we can change that. So what you should see then is that for this particular petition, these are the findings that we are suggesting. Therefore, the board would approve or deny the variance as indicated with the conditions. All that's straight out of your staff report. I do want to make sure to draw your attention, though, to the fact that not all of the conditions are technically met. In particular, items, because it used to be you had the yes or no. That was a lot easier to follow. If it was all yeses, you should grant it. If there was one no, you weren't supposed to. It's a lot harder to tell which ones are which with this format. So if you have any suggestions on how we might change that, we can do so. But for today's purposes, I was just noticing that. I would note that on the request relating to the soil types, criteria 1 and criteria 4 are not in conjunction with the required conditions to be found. So if you adopt these, those are essentially no votes on those. And on the size variance request, the same is true for conditions 3, 4, and 7. Those would essentially be no's on those as well. So does this make sense? Are there any questions on reviewing it? You choose whether you want to go forward with it this way or do it differently.
I think once we get our feet in the water, we'll figure it out.
If you have any questions, let me know.
Are you saying we don't have to have the 8 yeses?
You do, and that's why I wanted to draw your attention to those, is that if you adopt this as is, that's essentially on the first one, 6 yeses, 2 nos, and on the second one, 5 yeses, 3 nos, which means neither variance should be, under the way that it's written, approved.
So then we should go back to strike. We could go back to yes and no.
You can go back
but
and
we're
re-
going to strike the italicized finding of fact.
You could continue to, you could leave the italicized pieces in there if that is consistent with what you would find.
Then you must
And
come
we
up
can
with a
add the-
narrative.
Yep, we can add the yes or no piece to that if you would like to, or we can do it some other way. But just to draw your attention to those couple that are not in compliance with what the criteria would be, you may want to spend some additional time discussing those criteria and decide whether or not those have or have not been met, or if there's ways you could address that with conditions.
So basically change the narrative.
If you don't agree,
Italicized narrative.
yes, if you don't agree with it, we will change it. We just need to know what your decision is.
Repeat those numbers again.
On, and I think we'll probably, next time there's 2 variances on one, we might label them A and B, something along those lines. But on the size variance request, to allow the division of land into 1.7 acres, it is criteria 3, 4, and 7.
Yep.
And on the prime soils, it is 1 and 4.
Thank you.
If there's not any other questions, I will.
If anybody isn't confused yet, let her talk some more, huh? Please.
Mr. Chairman, the intent was, I don't know if everyone can hear me, but maybe to read through a couple of them and see if that flows all right for you, and we'll take input at the end or whenever anyone has some, and we'll modify the process as you would like.
You know, for
Just
amongst
showing up here,
ourselves.
this is number, the first one, right?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Okay. Richard?
I guess this is going to be a busy afternoon. If it were me and I were the chair, I would elect that we digest what the board is trying to do. Not this board, but the county board, county planning and zoning, and revert back to what we've always done. Yes and no?
The Planning Commission is also moving to this format.
Yep. No, I'm not saying that that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying that we're going to be here an extra hour. It's up to you guys. I would continue to do business until everybody has a chance to digest what we're doing here.
I guess I don't disagree with you, Richard, but I mean, we got to read through these and say yes or no, and isn't that what we did before?
That's what we did before.
So,
You wait a little, that's fine. We can leave it the way it is. I mean,
Well, let's try it and see what.
confuse
see what
things a
happens.
little bit. Anyway, go ahead.
Findings of fact. This one is for the soils, is that right?
The first one is the
1.7 acres.
1.7 acres. And just so I'm clear, have I got the right one here?
It says on the back page here, does it say 1.7 acres?
Yeah, this is, let's just start out and see where we get. The number one on our findings of fact, the variance request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Is not.
Are we on the same line? Good Lord. 1.7 in over here. Flip this page over and see if we got it right. Yeah, this is number 2. There we go.
That's number 2. The variance is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. This request for a smaller than code building site minimizes the acreage taken out of production. I don't know what's wrong with that.
I'd say that, yes to that one.
Number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comp plan. The comprehensive plan supports maintaining and sustaining the vitality of family farms. This variance would create a residence in proximity to the petitioner's farming operation. By the way, I've done that. Preservation of the agriculture economy is consistent with the comp plan. I don't see a problem with that one.
I think that was definitely yes.
I agree.
Number 3, the applicant has not established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. The petitioner has proposed to establish a building site for a farm dwelling in the Agriculture and Resource Conservation District. The 1.7 acre building site impacts the prime soils as little as might be practicable on the site.
Can I see what you got? That's 3. I'm looking. I'm getting confused. We got the same thing here. Maybe I was looking in the wrong place. Okay.
Well, you said you were 75, so.
I am. Go ahead.
I told him he looked pretty good for 75, and maybe he's, no, just kidding. The petitioner has proposed to establish a building site for a farm dwelling in the Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District. The 1.7 acre building site impacts the prime soils as little as might be practicable on the site and helps a family member work in the farming operation. Applicant has not established practical difficulties to a 5 acre site, but a smaller footprint takes away less prime tillable acres. I don't see a problem with that one. You folks?
I'd like to know why.
Let me just read what my page says. Okay?
Are you sure you're on the right one?
We're on 3, right?
Well, it depends on which one you got
The
here.
petitioner has proposed to establish a building site for a farm dwelling in the agriculture resource, blah, blah, blah.
That's
The-
number 2, that's variance number 2.
That's number 3.
No, that's, you're on the second, the other finding page is what we're dealing with.
No wonder.
Exactly. There we go.
Because I am not following anything that he's saying.
There you go.
Sorry, there's 2 different
Yeah,
variance pages.
yeah, I know. This is the
And thereby
1.7.
fact the finding, we'll put A and B. How would that
I made
say?
a note on the wrong piece of paper.
This way.
That's why, maybe I'm 75, but at some time, I'm gonna speak up. It's gonna make sense to this old boy.
I don't doubt that. He's done it in the past.
It'll
So
continue
number
next-
3 makes sense to everybody?
I got a question about number 3, just from this process here, not necessarily for or against. This italicized is what the staff recommendation is on this?
That's the
Or
summary of the staff analysis from the.
staff analysis of that, okay.
We're analyzing,
Petitioner
and we're condensing the memo just so that you don't have to flip back and forth.
Okay, so, and this has not established, is from that, you've decided that. That's not necessarily our question, right?
Right, you can change that. That's just
Okay.
the summary of the staff analysis.
Okay, all right.
It's just the analysis based on these
Okay, so
facts that we've got to work with.
if we're going to accept number 3, then we would have to change that the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties? If that is what
That's
we're,
right.
is that what we're agreeing with?
And the reason why.
And the reason why? Okay.
My thoughts were reasonable. Yes. And it's reasonable.
Well, they reduced the size, and they're part of the family, and they're going to be helping on the farm, so I don't have a problem with it.
And there's a smaller footprint taken away, takes away less prime tillable soil is really the one I think is, you know. So I would, move to change number 3 to the applicant has established.
Okay,
With
just
those reasons.
scratch not.
Do we need, Phil, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. Fine.
Number 4, the variance request is not due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by owners of the property since enactment of the ordinance. And the staff summarizes the variance request is not due to special or unique conditions. It is what the petitioners prefer to be permitted.
Although somewhere in our ordinance, we have, it's hard to remember it all, it's 320 or 30 pages. But somewhere in there, we have tried to support the continuation of the agricultural family. And I think that's an intent.
Anybody else? From looking at the map, I think that's the least problematic place to put the building site.
I mean, you could force them to go into the setback into the woods and not use any prime soil, but they'll use more prime soil getting the driveway back there than if you just let them build up front. That's my thinking.
Yeah, sometimes there's no end to doing good. The harm you do.
So are we saying that the variance request is due to special circumstances? And can we give reasons for that?
You want to repeat that? I missed the first couple words.
If we are to answer this in the affirmative, then we'd have to say the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to this property, not created by the owners. And then give reasons for that?
I would agree with that.
And what would the reasons be?
Actually, the reason I think is a lot like number 3. It's a smaller
Right.
footprint.
Same thing.
That's one. Is there any other we'd put on there?
Well, the words I put there, this is a reasonable approach in support of the family farming operation.
Okay.
So we're in agreement that number 4 is okay. Let's go on to number 5. The variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values.
Mr. Chair, did you say that you were in agreement that number 4 was okay, or were you changing it to read?
It was okay with the change.
Okay, just verifying, thank you.
Are we considering these discussions the final vote on these?
Well,
Yes or
we'll
no?
still have a final
Final vote
vote.
on this as we go down.
And if we want to review.
You can do it again.
of them. We did that last time. I don't want to go through all them and then do it over, with a final vote. If we can work our way through it and then get to the end, and then if somebody wants to revisit one of these, we can do that.
Okay.
I'll read it again. The variance will not alter the essential character of the locality, nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. And the project will not alter the essential character of the locality. And they already have 2 small tracts with dwellings within 1,000 feet of the proposed lot. So that one's okay, according to the staff? Number 6, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Although the petitioners have stated that economic considerations are part of the reason for requesting a variance, they do not constitute practical difficulties.
I agree.
I do too. Anybody else? Number 7, the variance can be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and it is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. The staff report suggests the petitioner's need for a variance from a WCZC. What does that mean?
Well, the County Zoning Commission.
Okay. Mandate, sounds like a radio station. Mandated 5-acre lot down to a 1.7-acre lot can be reasonably alleviated.
Basically, there's enough land there that they could use 5 acres.
Okay.
Grandpa wanted to donate it.
Well, he didn't say he was donating.
Whatever.
Any comments on that? Number 8, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Staff's comments, this request is not a use variance as the ARC district permits the construction of dwellings for those engaged in farming adjacent property if a conditional use permit is granted by the county board. Further, this variance, if granted, shall not permit a lower degree of flood protection as is not in the floodplain. So that one's pretty well a moot point as I read it.
And just to back up a little, what were the reasons if we say the variance, are we saying no to that? Is that where, without giving any specifications here,
Number 7?
yeah.
Well, I think it's stating a fact that the variance can be alleviated if they want to go to 5-acre lot. That's why they're here for a variance. They don't want to go to 5 acres.
I understand that. So are we,
We don't want them to waste that land, is what I think.
so I just want to know what the reasons for accepting that less acreage would be.
Well, I mean, you know, you would hope that this house would get built and it stays in the family, but there's always that black swan that comes flying out. I mean, in the event they'd ever sell that off, you'd be selling another 3-4 acres of tillable land that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get the reasons in here, if we're gonna go with that, you know.
If you look at number 5 down here in the bottom, Margaret, I think that deals with it pretty well. And we'll get to that one. Yeah, if we approve it, that's a real,
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, I think it would be good to read those conditions before we approve or deny.
that's a good idea. I'll do that. The following conditions are suggested by staff for if we decide to approve this petition. 1, the owners of the property to which this variance is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process as well as before the Board of Adjustment in accordance with all conditions to the variance. Number 2, the petitioners obtain the required development certificate and septic permit for the proposed dwelling and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of the state of Minnesota and Winona County. Number 3, subject to recommendations from Homer Township, to include the petitioners obtaining the necessary driveway access permit should it be applicable. Number 4, obtain a driveway permit from Winona County. And number 5 is the one I was talking about with Margaret here. This is kind of important. The following statement should be recorded on the property deed. Owners, residents, and other users of property in this zoning district or neighboring properties may be subjected to inconvenience or discomfort arising from normal and accepted agricultural practices and operation, including but not limited to noise, odors, dust, operation of machinery of any kind, including aircraft, the storage and disposal of manure, or the application of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. Owners, residents, and users of this property or neighboring property should be prepared to accept such inconveniences or discomfort and even possibly injury from normal operations and are hereby put on official notice that the state right to farm law, Minnesota Statute 561.19, may bar them from obtaining a legal judgment against such normal operations. And finally, number 6, the petitioners receive a conditional use permit from the County Board of Commissioners to allow a single-family dwelling on less than 40 continuous acres, in this case on approximately 1.7 acre parcel of the Winona County zoning ordinance. Does that answer any of your concerns, Margaret?
Not really. I'm just wondering, how would number 7 read if we were to vote in the affirmative? You know, to accept, are we saying the variance can be alleviated, therefore they don't need it, or what exactly are we saying on number 7? Is what I'm trying to.
I think, personally,
I mean, the yeses and nos are throwing me off here a little bit. I just want to process, you know, what this form's saying we should.
now you know I thought we probably ought to stick with yes and no
Right.
until we thought about it a bit.
Right.
But in any event, what they're trying to do is minimize disruption to prime soils. Okay?
Right, I
And in
understand,
doing
but
so-
what are we saying? I want to know what we're saying here.
Well, what we're basically going to say at the end of the day, that maybe is a better approach to preservation of agricultural activity in the county than pulling 5 acres out of a hat as the absolute minimum size lot. Okay?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, but.
So the way I would write it, I believe it's a reasonable approach. I might even
So-
put in
so
there,
we
if
would-
not desirable, to minimize the tillable soil.
So we'd be saying the variance is reasonable, is a reasonable method
In this particular case.
in this, okay, that we're saying it in the affirmative on the vote.
Right.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
I didn't write that down, I just spun it off the top of my head, but.
Right, right.
The way that criteria would read in the findings would be the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance.
Oh, it cannot be, okay, see, there's where mine is really,
Okay.
mine is trying to get the,
I always have to get too wordy. Thanks.
Are we done talking about this one?
I'm all done.
I'm done talking.
I believe,
Question then would be on number 7, is the Board of Adjustment going with can or cannot for that one?
I believe cannot's fine. Matter of fact, I think it's obvious it has.
Just so it gets a yes vote. That's what she was getting at.
That's what I was trying to get
That's what we're
at.
trying to
Yes,
get at.
yes,
Cannot.
right, so.
Okay, based on the foregoing findings, the Winona County Board of Adjustment, I need an emotion to either approve or disapprove of this petition.
I move we approve. With the amendments.
I second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve this petition with 6 conditions, which have already been read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
good.
She has a great smile over there, you notice that?
No, I hadn't had time to look at her. But you're right.
Just make sure she's not laughing at us there.
Maybe that's it.
There you go.
You got that all straight? Oh, you're a sweetheart.
Okay, number 2. This one is to do with, what is this one to do?
Prime soils.
The soil types. Okay, I assume we follow the same procedure. Is there another video, Eric, or we go right to our,
No, the presentation and staff report addressed both variances. It's just
Okay.
it's these documents where now you're looking at the findings as it relates to the prime soils.
but we need to still offer,
You've read most of these verbatim already, but if you wanted to hit on the ones where you have the debate, it's the first one and fourth one on the second document that you have to either confirm.
other question, do we need to have a public on this one? No? Okay. Okay. Findings of fact, do we read all of them or just ones that we think are controversial?
We already went through the first.
Well, you did, you were on the wrong page.
This is true.
On that first one, we're saying that the variance, this is, says it is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. So
Just is.
theoretically, if we were to
Is in-
say it is,
Is intent.
and then what would the reasoning be behind that?
Okay, that's a good point, Margaret. Project, according to the staff notes, is not considered to be a use variance, and as such would be permitted pursuant to chapter, there's that WCZO again. The Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District was established to preserve class 1 to 3 soils for agriculture uses, and the proposed building parcel is mapped as primarily class 2 and class 3. This request for a building site is not then considered in harmony with the intended purpose of prime soil protection, but minimizes the acreage taken out of production. And we already talked about that, minimizing.
That would be the reason we would say it was in harmony, because of the minimum.
There you
the
go.
Smallest footprint.
We all agree on that one.
Yep.
Number 2, I think we can agree on. Number 3, the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Staff's thoughts, the petitioner has proposed to establish a building site for a farm dwelling in the Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District. The construction would take land out of the prime soils, but the use is consistent with the surrounding agriculture area. The site impacts the prime soils as little as might be practicable on the site and helps a family member work the farming operation. These may be aggregated as the applicant has established some practical difficulties, and I fully agree with that one.
So do I.
Number 4, the variance request is not due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners since enactment of the ordinance. Staff's thoughts are the alternatives to the parcel for a building site involves steep slopes. That goes back to the 5-acre thing. Woodland clearing. It would also enlarge a longer driveway with more prime soil disturbance for it and is not due to circumstances created by the owner.
I agree totally.
And then there's a couple that we can all agree.
Do we have to change it to the variance request is due to special circumstances then?
Yeah.
Get rid of the not.
Get rid of the not if it was to be voted in the affirmative?
Okay, 5 and 6 are okay? According to my notes, number 7, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. Staff's thoughts, the petitioner has proposed a farm dwelling site on prime soils and alternatives to prime soil locations would be wooded or steep slopes only and cannot be reasonably alleviated if a dwelling is proposed.
Looks like a yes to me.
Yeah, that's the same thing. We've been talking about that all
I think you
along.
got to change the wording though again.
Right.
Variance it can be.
Well,
alleviated.
it says cannot be.
No, we got to take it the way it is because it cannot be alleviated. So we have to accept it the way it is because the variance cannot be alleviated by any reasonable methods.
I think
That's not
the common thread, when I look at our discussion, I think we got to the same place in the universal concept of this as the board did. I think they took individual line items and said not. But in reality, the size of the lot, the protection of prime soil, the protection of woodlands, not getting into steep slopes, I think all of it becomes more and more obvious that we're both on the same page.
Sure, but for the actual wording of this,
Yeah, I
this
know.
variance cannot be alleviated. If they could alleviate it some way, then we would be voting. We would say to do that, so
Right.
they can't alleviate it, so,
They can't alleviate
We need
it
to
without
accept it
doing
the
more
way it is.
damage to farm
right,
land.
right. So the cannot, you getting that, Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the cannots stand in this.
confusing.
I'm just trying to get our documents in order here, you know.
Doing a hell of a job.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
My English.
I am a thinking person, you know?
I won't deny that, Margaret. Based on the foregoing findings, the Winona County Board of Adjustment, are we ready for a motion?
Chair, I would like to clarify on item number 4, that it is or is not, and if it is, what is the reason for that?
The is to minimize the disturbance of prime land, minimize the footprint.
And also to stay out of the steep slopes.
Actually, I'm glad that they did it this way. I think it makes sense.
Well, how do we want the words?
We're saying the variance request is due to special conditions, and we're saying the special conditions are the steep
All of
slopes
the above.
and the,
Longer driveway.
and the longer driveway, and disturbs us, the prime soil.
Keep in mind the preservation of the farm and the farm family. I think it's holistic, consistent with the intent of the WCZO.
We should start a radio station with those letters. I
Already
like
got
that.
the mics.
Can we have a motion to approve or deny the variance?
I would like to, Mr. Chair, just read through the conditions that would be again, there's,
The following conditions at the bottom.
Okay, number one, the owners of the property to which the variance is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process as well as before the Board of Adjustment in accordance with all conditions to the variance. Number two, the petitioners obtain the required development certificate and septic permit for the proposed dwelling and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of the state of Minnesota and Winona County. Number three, subject to recommendations from Homer Township to include the petitioners obtaining the necessary driveway access permit should it be applicable. That's a county road, right?
correct.
Number four, obtain a driveway permit from Winona County Highway Department. Number five, I'll read this one a little slower. This is the one I read before, but I think it's important. The following statement should be recorded on the property deed. This will be future owners long after we're all gone. Owners, residents, and other users of the property in this zoning district or neighboring properties may be subjected to inconvenience or discomfort arising from a normal and accepted agricultural practices and operation, including but not limited to noise, odors, dust, operation machinery of any kind, including aircraft, the storage and disposal of manure, or the application of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. Owners, residents, and users of this property or neighboring property should be prepared to accept such inconveniences or discomfort and possibly injury from normal operations and are hereby put on official notice that the state right to farm law, Minnesota Statute 561.19, may bar them from obtaining a legal judgment against such normal operations.
You know, I would like to stop us there for a second. I absolutely hate wiggle room. What does should mean? Does that mean may? Does that mean possibly? Or the good? I mean, it should say will. That particular statement should always say must, will, period.
Now, is this document, or what I just read, is that a county thing or a state thing, or where does that come from?
Yeah, it was put in our zoning ordinance.
County.
Been amended slightly.
I would say we should talk to our county board people about that.
Yeah, well, I'm just throwing that out. I mean,
For today, we're going to do it this way.
I listen to you, yeah. Yeah,
Well, I'm
it's
glad.
a little late in the day to change the county zoning ordinance.
Number six, petitioners receive a conditional use permit from the County Board of Commissioners to allow a single-family dwelling on less than 40 acres on approximately 1.7 acre parcel. And there's a bunch of numbers there of the Winona County zoning ordinance. Can we vote?
Let's do so.
I need a motion to approve or disapprove.
Motion to approve
I'll second it.
Conditions?
with conditions,
Conditions.
correct?
As amended.
Motion has been made to approve this petition, this one with, what did we call it, Margaret? Class 1 or 2 soil, 2 or 3 soil types, with the conditions I just read twice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now, I have to read something, is that right? Where is that
The one
document?
right in front of your,
In the front? All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after the receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. Good luck with your project, folks. Actually, best wishes. I don't know if luck is involved. We have our next petition, which is which one here? Number 2. Eric, you got something for us, or we got?
It's the facts for the next one when we get to after the staff presentation.
He's handing out the,
There's only one page this time.
I'd like to get confused on that one.
okay, item number 2 for today involves a feedlot setback request to allow a new building site 560 feet from a neighboring feedlot instead of 1,000 feet. The property is located in section 33 of Richmond Township, and it lies just south of County Road 3 and Little Trout Valley Road. A township road is below the acreage there. The petitioners propose a 4-acre parcel and it would be located immediately south of an Erdman feedlot located to the north. And that is also the facility in which they seek a 560-foot setback. I believe animal units, we're currently around 49, but looking at some of the records, and I think the staff person talking with the applicant found that at times it carried more than 50 animal units. So there was a very conservative approach to say that for enforcement purposes, we want to recognize that at least a 50-plus animal unit facility. A couple of slides showing the location of the building site. Currently alfalfa, some corn ground, and again bordered by woods. Shot of the existing feedlot. That's across the road or to the north, the Erdman feedlot. And I think we got a video here. Do you have to hit it?
I can do it.
Okay. And I don't think there's any audio on it. Okay, so now I'll try to narrate. Again, this is County Road 3. And you have to bear with me, this was not my video, so I'm just going on the report. And now I believe we're looking south at the proposed building site. He's kind of pointing it out. Pointing out the ravine kind of topography, and now that would be looking to the east along County Road 3 or so. That'd be looking at the property across the road. Again, the proposed driveway for this site would be located, I think, almost parallel or on the other side of the road to the existing farm entrance. This would be the view looking to the west. Believe we received comments from Richmond Township on this request, and they have indicated support for the request. And I believe the applicants are here, so I'll turn it over to the public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing for this petition.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made, second, to open a public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will open the public hearing. Is there anybody who would wish to speak for or against this petition? Please come forward, state your name, where you live.
Randolph Erdman, and I speak for this petition.
Any other details for us?
No, thing is, the reason why we picked this area is because if she is gonna hook on to my existing well and the shortness of the driveway, and we didn't wanna take any, we feel we took the poorest cropland if we get to build on this site. So that's why we chose this area.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you live at the feedlot?
No, I own this other property. I'm an Erdman too.
Okay, thank you.
You referred to she.
This is my daughter.
Oh, okay, that's kind of what I assumed, but, so basically, you own the land, your daughter's buying it from you, and you're gonna save $40,000 building drilling a well. You're gonna hook onto the well across the street.
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else to speak for or against this petition?
The well's not across the street.
Oh,
I'm the other place right down the road.
okay.
I don't think they got it in.
Across the street would be the Browns, is it the,
Comes the community well.
along the road? Who's got the across the street property?
Out Western, it used to be a Tom Dicker farm, and Western purchased it.
So it isn't, okay.
And they're in favor. I mean, they've never
They never,
expressed,
they never said nothing against it to me.
And they got a notice from the county, so.
what was the timeline on that one, Kate?
Actually, it would have been twice because we were supposed to have this meeting the third Thursday. So there was a letter that went out informing of that. And then when we canceled it, we had to send out yet another letter reaffirming that it's today. So there would have been 2 rounds.
Is that farm in the same township?
Yeah, it's all in Richmond Township, I believe.
This was one of the places that I went and looked at it. I mean, it's being described properly. It's not very good farmland. I mean, it's not your best.
Let's finish the public hearing and then we'll discuss. Is there anybody else to speak for or against? Third time, is there anybody else to speak for or against? Okay, the motion to close the public hearing,
So move.
Second.
moved by Richard, second Margaret. She's nodding. She can hear good over there. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Fill us in a little bit. You saw this. It looks like the crop isn't outstanding right there to me too, but what else did you see?
Well, it is, across the road, which you can see in that map that's in your packet. I mean, that is the farm, and I guess as long as they've been properly notified, if you follow that road back, there's several new houses that have chosen to build in the same location, kind of type thing, the poor farm ground.
No, you're right. I go down that Route 3. I didn't go look at this one, but I go down Route 3 once in a while when I'm coming up here. So,
That was the first time I was on that road, so, yeah.
but there are a lot of homes that have sprung up there over the years. God knows, people need a place to live.
Should we go through the findings of facts?
Sure, let's do that.
Well, are there any of these that you're going to highlight that we got to change the wording on?
I would highlight items number 1, 2, and 3. As written, those would be the equivalent of no votes.
1, 2, and 3? Okay, number 1, the variance request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Staff's comments, a feedlot setback is intended to allow existing operators to continue their business and to avoid conflicts with residential uses within these setbacks in terms of drinking water, odor, noise, and other aspects of operating this type of business. This request is not then considered in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance because it was not meet codified feedlot setbacks.
And just for my own understanding, Eric, there's already 2 houses existing that fall within that 1,000-foot setback is what this operation would require?
I believe so, but I think they're more around the 800-foot space that there are.
And this feedlot operator, if he was going to expand or redo something, he would already be forced to get a variance because of that, right? Or just depending upon where he...
No, that's why they're trying to enforce the 1,000-foot setback so that he wouldn't need the variance if he chose to go back up above. He's hovering right at that 48, 49 right now, so technically with the 500-foot setback would be all that's required, but since it has the capacity to go over that, historically, the records show that he has been above that 50 animal unit mark. We're enforcing that they're within 50 to 100, so we're doing the 1,000-foot setback instead to take the burden of a variance off of him and put it onto this new house.
That seems perfectly reasonable to me. I mean, you know, he's got 1,000 car, you know, we're, these people are looking for a variance for 1,000 feet. Well, I think so.
No, they're building within 560 feet.
That was the variance from the 1,000 to 560. 1,000 is what's normally required.
Who decided to change the 500-foot setback for 50 animal units to 1,000-foot for more than 50?
2011, Planning Commission and County Board.
I know, but somebody went out there and counted 51, or how did?
Yeah, I think in the staff report.
To my way of looking at the request,
The neighboring feedlot currently is registered for 47 animal units, but is not stocked to capacity, which is more than the 50 animal units. There are records indicating the site has been registered for as many as 79 animal units. The feedlot setback is based on capacity, so the required setback from this feedlot is 1,000 feet.
So it's based on capacity and not animals.
let's go back to the request. Maybe I'm confused. Request. The petitioner seeks a variance to allow a new building site established within 1,000 feet of a registered feedlot consisting of more than 50 animal units pursuant to. So, he can go to 1,000 animals. No? Well, not whatever.
At 300, you get involved with conditional use permitting for changes for feedlots. A review through the planning commission.
But these people are asking for a variance to the 1,000 foot.
They're asking to build a house within that 1,000-foot perimeter.
That's right.
Which would mean if the farmer wanted to go and build and expand, if we grant this variance, he would have to go before the variance board.
Okay.
Correct?
If he expanded closer towards any of the limiting factors, such as the 2 or 3 houses that are bordered in that area, he could go in any direction except closer, which is
I didn't know that.
It's reciprocal, so that there is a 1,000-foot setback that's applied to a feedlot expansion with any residential dwellings, and vice versa.
Right.
For a residential house, it needs to be 1,000 feet.
And what you're saying is there's already 3 houses within that
This
1,000?
would be the third, yeah.
There's already 2 houses that are built within that 1,000-foot perimeter. So the person that went for the expansion of the feedlot would have to go for a variance regardless if this was built or not.
Perhaps if they were going in that direction. This one will be closer than, I believe, the other 2, but in that way of thinking, yes, there probably would be perhaps an infringement on the 1,000 feet.
And this request alone would not cause that to happen. It would be cumulative with the other 2 houses that are already there.
Right.
Okay,
It all
just-
depends on the various area that they expand.
Right, and we heard nothing from that neighbor. As of today, you heard nothing from any neighbors about any,
I don't believe so.
okay, just to clarify?
Like, you didn't hear anything from the neighbors, calls.
I think what Lou's assessment was for this new house, that any feedlot expansion would actually be further away. You know, it's not, they're not gonna, their house and all their buildings are already on the side. They can't really encroach closer to this house, they would go the other way.
It's like they go to the north.
Yeah.
That kind of alleviates that issue then in this case. Any other comments on number 1?
I would just, I'm going to play Margaret and tell me how are you going to word it so that you can vote yes for that?
If we were to say that the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose, what would our reasons be?
Well, it's not going to affect the feedlot because they could still expand in the other direction. And it's a farm person having a family member, similar to the last petition, live nearby to,
I don't think that's applicable in this situation. If I read correctly, this young lady is a teacher / working at Quick Trip in the area. She's not part of this she's not part of this farming operation that would be impacted by this variant.
okay. I must have confused it with a different one.
There's so many, so.
And that point is addressed in number 2, so
Okay.
we kind of get to that one next.
Let's come back to number 1. Margaret, is that okay?
Sure.
Think about that one. The variance number 2 request is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan recommends limited non-farm residential development to encourage residential housing near the edge of the existing infrastructure in towns to minimize urban-rural conflicts. This request is not then considered in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance because it is a request for residence for a non-farming occupant. Yeah, we might as well look at number 3 too. These are all the ones that are supposed to be contentious. The applicant has not established that there are practical difficulties to complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. The petitioner's daughter wants the site for residence near family, which is not listed as one of the practical difficulties. Well, you have a bunch of kids or family, I think that's arguable, but the project, if a variance is granted, takes less land out of ag production than a similar sized home site would if situated farther back on the property. And I think number 3 is what we were talking about in our first petition. Longer driveway, farther back. So I don't think number 3 is a concern. Now 1 and 2 we can still talk about. Your thoughts?
My only thought is how does this get worded so we vote yes for it?
Well, let's look at number 2. Limited non-farm residential development to encourage residential housing near the edge of existing infrastructure in towns to minimize urban-rural conflicts. This request is not then considered in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance because of the request as residence for a non-farming occupant. Maybe she's non-farming, but she's still family. Maybe her kids will farm.
Well, I would say that you could vote yes for number 2 if you take out the word not and they're building on non-prime soils.
Okay.
So your impact to the farming community would be minimized.
And there's already 2 residential homes in that area, so.
You got a problem with that, Richard?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, the only one left is number 1. The request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. The feedlot setback is then now I'm reading staff comment. The feedlot setback is intended to allow existing operators to continue their business and to avoid conflicts with residential uses within these setbacks in terms of drinking water, odor, noise, and other aspects. Well, these are farm folk. I think they're used to these kinds of things.
Well, for myself, I mean, I would not have a problem granting this, hearing no negative comments from the feedlot owner. So I don't know how to put that in words so that you can vote
I
yes
do
for
think, when we go on, it gets back that the deed must have, because this house can be sold. Okay, and we get back to this recommendation. I assume it's here.
It's not in this one.
Well, I think we ought to include it.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to include must.
Is it in your
Should, it isn't in here. I assumed it would be.
I've got a couple copies of it here someplace.
No, I don't need to read it.
Yes.
Not should be, but must be.
We can't change the ordinance, but we
We
can put
can't
that-
change the
We can
ordinance,
put that on
but-
the deed,
but we
so,
can-
so it's,
Add to the deed like we did the first one.
right.
With the addition of it.
I'm going to move out of proper protocol here and just get a nod one way or the other. Would you folks be comfortable with that?
What do you think?
I'll read it again.
Basically, we're putting in a statement that makes people aware of the fact that you're putting a residential home in a farm area, and you better get used to the noise and the odors that may come from a farm. You know, right, and it's a formal piece that he'll read to you, so.
Yeah, it would attach to the deed.
And it gets attached to the
Someday when
deed, so
we're all 6
anybody
feet
that,
under that.
anybody that buys that will know that you have to, you know.
That will follow that deed for the next 1,000 years.
And that stays with the land, so.
You're fine with that? Thank you.
I don't know.
Do
I
we
don't think
have
we
that
have.
authority?
Yeah, to add conditions, we sure do.
Okay.
Can we talk about number one in terms of if we change the wording to the variance request is in harmony with the intent? The reasoning behind that would be, there's been no, the township has approved, supports this. The neighbors have not rejected this. And you're using the same drinking water. You're not, there already is that well, so you're not going to be affected necessarily by what's going on in the feedlot because it's already in existence. Would that be
That makes sense.
that's what I'm seeing, but
You wordsmith it.
You got that? Okay. All the rest of the 8,
I'm not sure I caught any reasoning regarding modifications to number 3.
We did.
Has or has not. Number 3 have, we need to have a reason why.
number 3, the applicant has not established there are practical difficulties. Well, we talked about family. We talked about,
I think it had more to do with the smaller footprint and using less farmland as far as developing a driveway to get back to land that would not require a variance.
right. You got that one figured out? All right. Anything else? Anybody go over the rest of them?
I think it would be.
I'm totally comfortable as long as we have that document in there that stays with the deed so that these folks' heirs don't make it hard for the farmers to farm someday.
Being that there's only 2 of them, Mr. Chair, maybe you should just read those. I know it's repetitive from the last time, but the 2 conditions that are printed here.
This is the statement that Richard wants must, and we're not sure we can do must, but
I think he's talking about these other
As
two.
far as the conditional use,
wanna read all
as
the
far
other
as
ones?
our conditions, it can say must.
There's only two others, we're familiar with that, and he accepts that one, but we're going to add that to the deed, but there's two other conditions that we may want to say
Okay.
out loud, so we have an
the other
understanding.
two following conditions, the owners of the property to which this variance is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process as well as before the Board of Adjustment in accordance with all conditions to the variance. Number two, the petitioners obtain the required development certificate and septic permit and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of Winona County and the state of Minnesota, and to include meeting the state electrical code and obtaining the required permit and inspection if applicable. Are we good?
Yeah, well, no, we're not good, because we want to have that,
You want me to read that one too?
That third condition, you want to read it again?
the third, no, you don't need to read it. I want to ask council this. We're not trying to change what the county board said, but I believe this board has the ability to make the recommendation, the following statement must, okay? And then put whatever the statement,
Could put the following statement must be recorded on the property deed.
as a condition.
Change anything within the.
That's right.
So you're saying right here, Richard, owners, residents, and users of this property are naming property instead of saying should, it should say must.
No,
After the bullet number 3,
after number 3,
Should
the
be
following
recorded.
statement must, no,
Instead of should, it should be must?
to include this. We will mandate through the verbiage that to be
Maybe I
written.
can shed some light on it. I think there's some misconceptions here. This discussion's going on
Good.
for a number of years too. Because when you see that condition, how does that get recorded? It gets recorded by being right there in that place, because then as a conditional use permit or variance is drafted, it's issued essentially a number and a date, and then these are listed right there on it. And anytime you issue a variance or conditional use permit, those are recorded actions. So then it is always going to be assigned to that property. So when we essentially state that statement be recorded on the property deed, it's by the very essence of adding that as a condition on that variance or that conditional use permit. And then it's going to be retrievable and searchable by that property that on this day the decision was made, and it's leading into this claim.
So what you're saying is there's no way to circumvent what that says if you had must or should. You cannot circumvent that. So
All I'm saying
we're-
is
so
the
we're
third
protected.
condition, the third condition is that. And if what you're saying is correct, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure
No,
that long after I'm dead and gone, that is on the deed.
The burden falls on the county to see this through, and that's by the essence of recording those approvals.
I should have known you. What took you so long? I mean, I really had to beat the drum on this baby.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
Do we have a motion to approve or deny this petition?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
I would second it.
Is that as amended with all?
I would have second. I would.
Yes, it is, as amended, motion to approve.
As amended and
Including the
additions.
third petition with the deed. Do I need to read them all again, or have we got
No.
this? And the petitioners understand. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved, but I have to read this thing. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to our decision today, just rendered at this public hearing, must do so to the district court, and the planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. Best wishes with your project, folks. Next.
Our third request is the Melvin Gingrich petition, and this request centers on to allow a new building site on a prime soil designation. This is located in St. Charles Township, and what is maybe distinguishable compared to the other ones that we had earlier, this is 118 acres. So essentially what they're looking at, building a new house, and there's also a pole building, and there's other improvements that are proposed at this point. We received a township acknowledgement form from St. Charles Township. They indicated no comments. In this case, the soil in question is a type 2, and I've put together kind of a soil map that shows that when we look at that 118 acres, about 67% of that parcel is considered prime. That prime soil would extend down over probably half of that. This is a very lineal 118 acres. Where non-prime soil is located to the south portion of that parcel. It's mainly steeper slopes, contains woods, and then also I believe there is CRP that is involved. GIS map shows the location of the building site. If you continue on 35, the interchange for the St. Charles off I-90 is right up here. This would be showing there is some buildings that neighboring this property. And working with the applicant on this petition, he's made several statements that for choosing it is ease of access coming off of the county road. The majority of the parcel is prime soils. There's no other alternative location to build a house on. There's also 42 acres that's currently enrolled in CRP, and it's not eligible for building permits. And this was the prime soil coverage. That kind of lime green color shows that most of the northern tier of that parcel is all prime.
So where's the CRP there?
I believe it's that transitional area that would be like right in here.
Not next to the highway.
Not next to the highway. And that you could ask the petitioner to verify that too, but that's my understanding. And a quick video, maybe just turn the audio off because I think this one was pretty windy when I did, and I'll just kind of narrate. This is currently the view off of County Road 35, and we're looking at the barn that he built. There's also a couple other ag buildings. According to the zoning ordinance, it's just a dwelling that we limit or prohibit as far as prime soils. So even if somebody wanted to put up corn bins, egg shops, the prime soil is not triggered at that point. This is kind of the view looking at the south into the property, and you can see as we get quite a bit further to the south, there's longer vegetation. That would probably be your CRP land, and then you see woods beyond that point.
The footprint that he's looking for, I didn't keep up with you. 40 acres, 5 acres for his house, or is it just a house on 118 acres?
A house on 118 acres. I don't believe his intent is to split it or divide it in any manner. This would be looking to the southwest. And I think I flip around, there is some older buildings that are most likely coming down, but I don't believe that's maybe even on this parcel. I think that belongs to the folks on the other side of the road. This would be the view looking to the east along County Road 35. And there is an existing field road entrance to the property. I think that concludes it. Thanks, Jan.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Phil. Motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Is there anybody that wishes to speak for or against this petition? Please come forward, state your name and where you're from.
My name is Jim Decker. I live at Sinclair Road, and this property butts up to the west end of mine. I'm not for or against right now, but I need to know, is this variance to build a dwelling, or is it to build any structure out there?
What's requested?
Yeah.
It's for the dwelling.
Okay.
They can put, our ordinance does not prohibit ag buildings from being built on prime soil. It's when a new building site.
Okay. So they don't need it for barns or anything like that. Now, are they going to sink a well, I would assume?
I would assume.
Okay.
You're going to have a house, you got to have water.
Install a septic system?
I think that would be in our recommendations at the end.
Yeah, they're gonna need it.
Yeah, septic permit
Okay.
and a driveway access permit.
Okay.
Doesn't it say here that the petitioner seeks a variance to allow the construction of a new farmstead, including a dwelling and various agricultural structures? Is that what we're dealing with here?
That's it, yeah. But the agriculture structures is not our deal, right?
Right, just, the variance just,
Just for the house.
Okay. Were you going to build greenhouses and that, or what is your plan? You know, I'm not for or against right now, I just wanted some questions. Is that your plan? Okay. And any other buildings then?
As of now.
Okay. Is there any future plan to split this property so that another Amish family moves in?
can we see who's answering these questions? I just.
Okay, I need some answers.
Yeah,
I know, but
let's,
if we're going to talk to people in the audience, I need to know.
They have them on the record at the microphone.
Oh, okay, all right.
Can you come forward and let us know?
I'm assuming this is Mr. Ginn, whatever.
please state your name and where you live, please.
Melvin Gimrich in St. Charles.
Okay?
I
And
live there now.
you're the petitioner in this process. Can you enlighten us with your, maybe answer this guy's questions or anything else you can help us with here? You're planning to build a house on your land, right? And it's more than 40 acres, and the only reason you have to is because it's on prime soil. By the way, I would compliment you on alfalfa on that property. You don't see that a lot by St. Charles, but anyway.
Organic,
Pardon?
switching over to organic.
I see. Well, we have a lot of alfalfa, but we're not organic.
Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Chairman, could you ask the applicant to step a little closer to the microphone so that we have his remarks on record?
Sure. Would
You
you,
just can't, Mike can't pick you up.
yeah, well, this all has to be recorded, so that's,
And the mic moves if you need it up a
maybe
little higher.
move it a little bit closer, you're a little taller. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
I don't know about the applicant, but maybe Mr. Decker, was that your name?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if we approve this one of the conditions that's listed here is the petitioner obtain a development certificate, septic permit, and comply with all relevant regulations and standard of Winona County and state of Minnesota. So
I just needed to know.
by doing this, I mean, he would have to agree to do that, you know.
I got my septic permit with me.
Okay, so.
No for or against?
No for or against.
All right, thank you.
Anything else you'd like to tell us?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak for or against this petition? Is there anybody else that wishes to speak for or against this petition? Is there anybody else that wishes to speak for or against this petition?
Just a clarification, I think he got the soil verification, which meant he went out there and there were soils verified, but there was not a septic permit at this point.
Okay,
And that's just a point of clarification.
sure, thank you. Okay, hearing that,
I think Mr. Gingrich would maybe challenge that. Do you have something there, Melvin, you'd like to share with the group?
That's the application. Application, they said I have to have an application, or permit to get a permit for the house.
It's an application.
I think he's showing a willingness to follow the conditions if it's so
Yeah.
granted.
I agree. Okay, do we have a motion to close the public hearing or not?
And I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Public hearing is closed. Staff or legal, did you have anything here that you wanted us to look in particular?
Just flag number 1, as it stands now, that would be a no vote, the rest would be yeses.
Okay, number 1, the variance request is not in harmony with intent and purpose of the ordinance, evidently because the Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District was established to preserve Class 1 through 3 soils for agriculture uses. 67% of the parcel is mapped as Class 2 and 3. This request therefore is not then considered in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. It would, if granted, allow a new farming family to live and work on their land. Anybody got any comments on number 1?
Well, yes. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read the entire planning and zoning ordinance. But I believe it is the serious, almost cultural intent. And Eric, anytime I deviate from that, argue with me. But I think, you know it more than I do, but I think it is the cultural intent of this area to promote farming, agriculture, and when somebody buys a piece of land and needs to put a house on it, as opposed to being a vacant owner, I personally believe that the approval of this request is consistent in a broader sense, maybe not line item by line item, but in a broader sense of the spirit of the county. Am I wrong?
I agree with you, Richard.
I've got a question about percentages here. How much, do we know how much land is in the CRP?
42 acres, I think it said.
42 acres.
Was it 40-odd acres?
Okay.
42. I thought I read this.
I'm looking at number 1, and the variance request to change it is in harmony with the intent? Is that what
Yeah, I
we're
think it is.
discussing here? And I think the fact that a high percentage of the land in this acreage is in that category, 67%, so I think that's one of the reasons I would say that it is in harmony, because between the 67% and the CRP program, I would think that considering those two factors, you know, the majority of his land is in that, you know, class 2 and 3, so.
Yeah.
He really, you know, his choices are limited to that, and the fact that 42 acres are in the.
The very fact of the matter is, he's somehow handicapped to be an on-site farmer because he can't site his house on the land that he owns, he wants to farm.
I'm not sure why,
That
if
sounds
you
like
own more than
practical
40 acres,
difficult.
they should even have to come here.
Do you have enough reasoning behind making it an is? Okay, then I would, you know, say that we change it and use the criteria we've listed.
Do we need to go through the rest, or should we just assume that they're not?
Shouldn't assume anything.
Right, we shouldn't assume anything. I'm with you on that one.
Okay, number 2,
Check the boxes.
the variance request is consistent with the comp plan. I think we agree about that? Or do I need to read the staff thing?
You don't need to read the staff. We're going to say yes to that.
Richard said. Number 3, the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner.
Pretty
Well, if you
obvious.
can't live there, you can't use it, probably.
Yeah, especially if you're Amish and you might not drive a car.
Number 4, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners of the property. The CRP might be part of that. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I don't think that has any bearing on anything.
Anybody else? Number 5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity.
I believe that's an obvious yes.
I agree.
Part of number 5 also says this project will not alter the essential character of the locality as it is primarily agriculture in composition. Number 6, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulty. The petitioners have not shared information to indicate that economic considerations constitute the reasons for the variance. So that's a null and void. Number 7, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is a minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. I guess if they wanted to build farther down on the poorer soils, they'd, same as problem as before, they have to put a long driveway in. Number 8, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in a zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Well, that flood thing usually doesn't pertain to most of Winona County anyway. Any
Not
other
Ridge Top.
discussion? Based on the foregoing findings, the Winona County Board of Adjustment does what? Do we have a motion to approve or deny?
I'd vote to approve and include the following conditions 1 through 3 that are listed here. And as amended, yes.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Oh, you got a second. She already moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is approved. Now, I need to read, or the petition is approved, I should say. This statement. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after the receipt of notice of the decision. to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. Best wishes with your project, sir. Next. Eric.
Fourth variance application is Brett Martin and Kayla Sandman. And this request is a feedlot setback, and it's two-pronged, I guess, as far as the effect, based on a new house location that the couple would like to build. It would be 170 feet from the father's feedlot, which consists of 10 to 50 animal units. And the setback for that type of feedlot from 10 to 50 is 500 animal units. The second part of this request is that the neighboring feedlot, which is Richard and Joanne Brown, they have a larger feedlot, 254 animal units from registration in 2010. This new house would be approximately 650 feet instead of a required 1,000 feet. So we got two different feedlots, two feedlot setback distances, and can maybe try to show. This exhibit shows the proposed Martin parcel. Again, they would create this configuration with an easement or a driveway that would come up to Nagle Ridge Drive. This is in Wiscoy Township. And this configuration was chosen in that, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there is another soils exhibit here too. So they designed this to meet the soil requirements, so thus we don't have that variance request based on trying to grab as much rough land to go ahead with this parcel. That represents about a 39% prime soil, so that would technically be, you know, under 40% to meet that prime soil standard. Okay, the setbacks that I mentioned, the house was about where the red square is. They'd be about 170 feet from the confined buildings right there, and the house would be approximately 650 feet, and that would be, these two structures do have livestock in, so my line's a little bit off on that exhibit, but it would be the nearest corner, be the southwest corner of that white building is where the neighboring feedlot would be. I should point out with this that the Martin house is right here. So I mean, you have, we talked about that with the other feedlot setback, is that we have a pretty limiting factor with a dwelling being basically right next door to the feedlots there at this point in time. This is a view of looking out. This would be, well, maybe you show, the house would be more, I believe, out in this area, and where the stake would be roughly in that area, and it's kind of looking back to the north from this vantage point. This would be the neighboring feedlot building. This is a view from the road. So looking off of Nagle Ridge Road, these are two different buildings, but those are those two buildings that you see in the aerial GIS. And this is a view looking back at the Martin set of buildings. And they have roughly between, it fluctuates from 10 to 50 animal units. Talking with Brian Martin, he didn't envision going over 50 animal units at any point, so staff feels comfortable with the assignment of 10 to 50 animal units on that site. Okay, I guess I'll just have a quick video. I think there's two parts to this one too. Okay, this is in regards to Board of Adjustment variance request regarding the Martin and Sandeman variance to allow a new building site from a couple of feedlots in question. We're currently looking at about where the approximate building site would be on this. The information indicates that it'd be approximately 7.7 acres in size. That could be subject to adjusting as you would get further down the line as far as creating the parcel. The two feedlot setback distances that are referenced is the one that's 170 feet from a feedlot consisting of 10 to 50 animal units. That would be essentially the father's place, Brian Martin. And we've measured about, according to the GIS imagery, an approximate 170 feet from what would be closely construed as what could be part of the feedlot buildings with this location. The other focal point, and probably the main emphasis, is the larger neighboring feedlot located to the east. I believe that would be the Brown property. And in that case, I believe from looking at the last feedlot registration form, they were slightly under 300 animal units. I believe there was 267 or so, according to the information. And from scaling that off on the aerial map, in this building site that we're looking at today is, I believe, 100 or 650 feet. I did drive by that site. I took a couple of pictures of that. There's one other building with livestock, and I will yet to confirm that at the time of shooting this video. The staff report should contain the accurate distance as well as the notice. So part of today's exercise is to try to obtain the correct information and the correct distance. And I thought, well, since I'm out here for the building site, I thought I would try to get the video here as well. The next bit of part two of the site, currently we're on the Township Road, 31233 Nagle Ridge Drive. And this is the view looking to the east. Again, this would be the Brian Martin property, and the building site would be southwesterly in that direction. So we were looking back up at the buildings and the Township Road in which easement would be created in that location. Just wanted to quickly, go to the east and get a view of the Brown property with the other feedlot that is mentioned in the request. And at this point, you probably want to also reference the aerial maps of the various buildings. Quite clear, the nearest ones in this direction are these two metal pole buildings. And as of today, the status is that they both are occupied with livestock. And we'll have the exact reference from the closest corner of that nearest one. There is also an older, I believe, dairy barn and some other buildings as you get to the southeast. So there is numerous buildings that would be classified as a feedlot structure according to the ordinance. And this would be the view to the south. That should conclude the video footage for this request.
About this time, you usually make a motion, Margaret.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The public hearing for this application is now open. Is there anybody who wishes to speak for or against this petition? Please state your name and where you live.
Brian Martin, Brett's dad, the applicant. It's my property. I guess I don't have anything to say for or against. I guess just making you aware of, we're going to draw water off our farm. There won't be another well. And I guess I really don't have anything else to say other than just introduce myself, I guess. So.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to speak for or against this petition? Anybody else for or against this petition? Now's your time to speak. And once more, third time, anybody else wishes to speak for or against this petition? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion is carried. Public hearing is closed. What is your wishes, board?
Mr. Chair, just to draw your attention, the way that it is currently written, items number 1, 3, 4, and 7 would be
1, 4, and 7?
1, 3, 4, and 7.
Here we go again. Number 1, the variance request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. This request is in harmony only in regard to offering an opportunity for an additional family to work into an existing farm operation. However, feedlot setbacks are intended to allow existing operators to continue their business and to avoid conflicts with residential uses within these setbacks in terms of drinking water, odor, noise, and other aspects of operating of the business.
Well, my personal feeling is that it is in harmony in regard to offering an opportunity for additional family members to work into the existence of the farming operation. And the feedlot owner the other feedlot owner that would have problems potentially with this construction has, in my minutes, said that they had no problem with it, that they were in favor of it. So, I think number 1 is a yes.
And the township also was in support
That's correct.
of that. So we're saying the variance request is in harmony. Is that sufficient for you, Stephanie? All right.
Number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comp plan, so we don't need to discuss that, I don't think. Number 3, the applicant has not established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Staff's comment, the applicant has not established that there are practical difficulties and are creating their own practical difficulties by building in this location. How many acres are in this total parcel? I didn't look.
7 odd, I think.
No, I mean,
Oh,
maybe you could answer that.
Actually, I own 52 acres, and we were working with Eric just to kind of make a parcel, to make the prime land work. I mean, right now it's at 7.44, but we haven't had it surveyed off yet, so we'll survey it off to match, what we need to work basically for the property.
So the total property is 52?
I own 52 acres.
52 acres, okay.
But his building site would be 7.44, the way it's laid out right now.
yeah, this is where we have to find a way to split the baby.
Well, I don't think it's going to change the essential character of the area. I mean, he does work on the farm, it is the family, so I think, you know, the fact that they're really not going to change the makeup, the neighbors have not, you know, objected, the township has not objected.
Who are we to object? Is that what you're saying, Margaret? Who are we to object? Is that what you're saying?
You're pretty good at coming up with wording, so number 3, what do we got to change to make it work?
My concern is that is related to criteria number 5. If you're going to change number 3, we need to be talking about the practical difficulties.
Just could look at your staff report too, that there's a number of things that could be, under right circumstances, considered a practical difficulty. By meeting the setback just means your driveway would have to be 2 times longer, and you'd be trying to get to the outer southernmost reach of it for a building site.
Yeah, it's the same thing we talked about in a couple of the other petitions is if they wanted to go way back by the woods and get out of the prime soils, then they'd probably destroy more prime soils getting there.
You know, if we told the word, each punctuation and whatnot in WCO, be no reason for this board. This is where we have to use some common sense.
There you go. Staff gets to hand off to us, and it's our deal then, right?
You read Margaret's agreement. I can hear the wheels turning.
Come on, Margaret, what do you got?
Well, I'm just looking at the terrain and the 12% slopes in the other areas. You know, they didn't create those. I think if we use what's in the staff analysis under number 3 in the larger packet. Would have the part about the driveway and the slopes.
Well, and this one does also have the statement to attach to the deed, which I think is important.
Have you got enough on number 3 with the slopes and the driveway, or you're saying that's not sufficient at this point?
I think I can make that work.
You can make it work, so if we say the applicant has established it for, could you read it back to us, what you think I'm saying?
I haven't crafted anything yet. I've got some
Okay,
notes.
okay, all right. But you think it's sufficient at this point?
I think I can legally use that.
Okay.
Which one are we on now,
Number
Margaret?
3,
Oh, well, I thought we just
we
voted.
just finished at number 3, right?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject. I would appreciate a little bit greater specificity from the board on that item. Rather than asking council to craft what the board's reasons are, I would like to hear the board themselves state what their reasons are. I think it's just a little cleaner cut that we don't do it after the fact. So if engineering or a longer driveway, whatever, if the board decides, I would appreciate that consideration.
I think that's a good point, thank you.
I just think the location minimizes the footprint of taking more prime land out of production. I mean, if they want to build back further, then the driveway starts taking out more prime land than if you just leave them build in the front.
Well, and as a parent and a grandparent and recognizing that we need more young people taking over agriculture, and we certainly don't want to hinder that if we can help it. It's a tough job and not everybody wants to do it.
So does that give you more clarification, Kay? Is that?
Thank you so much.
So now Now we're on to number 4.
The variance request is not due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners. As feedlots exist in the near locations. I don't know, this is kind of the same argument applies. The distance to the class poor soils, the family having a young person join or be part of it, live on the site, live on the land that you operate.
Well, the other part of that would be the feedlot existed prior to the ordinance, and the feedlot I'm referring to is the Brown feedlot. So, and the Browns have shown no objection to it, so the conditions, the circumstances were there prior to the ordinance.
So there's your practical difficulty.
That's how I see it. I don't want to put words in.
Richard usually got some Solomon words of wisdom.
I don't know, Margaret, what do you think?
I'm still thinking here.
I'm still listening.
Well, let's come back to that one. Number 5, the variance will not alter the essential character, location, public health, safety in the county, et cetera. That's a given. Number 6, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. And the petitioners have not shared information to indicate that the economic considerations are the reason for the variance request. Number 7, the variance can be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. The petitioner has proposed building a dwelling too close to the 2 feedlots, which can be alleviated by engineering on a site on sloping land further from the feedlot. Well, I guess if we denied it, they could still go do that, but the same argument applies like we talked before. Then they got to build a bigger driveway. They take out more ag land for a driveway, and I'm not sure.
I don't think that's in the spirit of the zoning ordinance. The ordinance is supposed to protect as much tillable land, not try to take as much out as you can.
Yeah, a lot of people who engineer these ordinances don't realize. We had one where the guy supposedly didn't meet the practical difficulties a number of years ago, and there was a site that somebody recommended way to hell back in no man's land, and I think it was like an 1,800-foot driveway we're going to put across prime land to save an acre. We know how many acres would be consumed by the driveway.
Rob Peter to pay 2 poles, is that what you're saying? Number 8, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. This request is not a use variance, as the ARC district permits the construction of a building on the parcel from a use standpoint. Further, this variance, if granted, shall not permit a lower degree of flood protection as it is not in the floodplain. Margaret, let's go back to where we were. Did you come up with some wording for us on that one? Was it number 4? Is that what we were?
I think it was number 3 we're talking about. Number 4 is the one we skipped. Special conditions.
Well, I don't know how it cannot be unique to the property. That property is there, it is, and it's that size, and there is, you either build a really long driveway to get back to class 4 soils, or you come in there and put it closer. It's,
Well,
the property is the way it is.
let me pipe in on that. We keep talking about this long driveway and whatnot, and everything prime soil. Where in here does it say that this, or in fact has it been demonstrated, and Eric probably is the one to know, that this, either one of these are designed to, is there any prime soil involved here?
Yes, in fact, I showed the one, there's a mapping exhibit in the packet.
Okay.
It shows well, how they created this 7.7.
Yeah, was to avoid that land, right.
Used under 40%, so it was an attempt to try to meet that soil standard. Because I just want to maybe point out too, in your list of conditions, should this variance be approved, the applicant will need to follow through the conditional use permit application. And that prime soils will again come up, and if we have this type of exhibit, it shows that it's meeting one of a major 10 criteria for allowing a small, less than 40 acre park.
Yeah, all right.
Focus on.
And what would happen if we re-engineered the driveway, getting back to the one we're on, to do away, to meet that one little line item? What does that do for us? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it would put us there, but how much more runoff, how much whatever would we engage in to run that longer driveway? I don't know. And what class is that soil? You know. I mean, we have to look at this as one holistic whatever.
Just to be clear, the issue is not prime soils, the issue is the feedlot setback.
Yeah, I understand.
So make sure that that's factoring in your analysis.
Yeah.
Well, if the feedlot owner doesn't care, and we have this document, like we've been talking about, and the other, two of the other three, we added it on a third one, and we're having a family going forward to live and work somewhat on the land. If the township don't care and the neighbor don't care, I'm not sure we should care. And I'm sure that's not going to meet the requirement of legal staff, but, so Margaret, you got to come up with the wording.
Oh, my. I'm at a loss here, so.
I think based on the discussion we've got on that one, with the length of the driveway, the feedlot, the priority ordinance, the lack of objection from the feedlot owner, I think that's sufficient.
The lack of.
Now, isn't it true, Eric, just to repeat, that the feedlot owner could still expand the other way?
Correct. Yep.
It's going to be hard for him to expand closer without tearing his house down.
No, I think you're referring to the Browns?
Yeah,
Yeah, the Browns can go,
they can go the other way, that's the bigger feedlot.
they can't get any closer. I think they're right on the line fence, it
Right.
appears to me now.
So they wouldn't go that way anyway. So that's probably why they don't care. And we have the document in one of our recommendations here that, like we read in the two or three previous ones, you know, you folks would have to understand. Go ahead.
Actually, Browns at one time was a big dairy operation, and they've got out of dairy, and now they have beef feeders. So they're actually kind of, in 10 years, I don't think it'll exist. The father is retired, and the son is my age, and he's, you know, in 10 years, probably there won't be cattle on that farm. So they won't be expanding that anytime soon.
Well, that's maybe why they're not against it. Maybe your son can take that over someday.
Yeah, we work together with them, so we're good neighbors.
Okay. Anyway, I think I've made up my mind, but Margaret, you got to come up with some more good words to share to make it all fit.
I think you're happy.
Okay, I did want to clarify on number 7, you are asking that be revised to the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
So we're good? Has anybody got anything else?
No, I'm fine.
Based on the findings of the board, I need a motion to approve or deny this petition.
I so move that we move to approve the petition with the recommendations,
How many is there? There's 5.
with the 5 recommendations, and the amendments to the findings of fact recommendations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Now I got to read this. Board of Adjustment appeal to District Court. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of this notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. Best wishes with your project. Do we have anything else to come before?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Margaret, second by Phil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Same sign. Motion is carried. We are adjourned.